It was the year 1917, and I had been sent to the front lines in the Western Front during World War I. I was just a young man, barely 19, barely understanding the horrors of war. But by the time I reached the trenches, I realized that the battle between men was the least of my worries. The trenches were a hellish maze of mud, rats, and unrelenting gunfire. The stench of death hung in the air like a heavy, suffocating blanket. The constant barrage of shells had a way of warping your perception of time. Days bled into one another, and each moment seemed like an eternity. There were rumors of strange happenings out here, whispers between soldiers that were always dismissed as a result of too much fear and fatigue. But on that fateful night, I learned the truth. It started with a few strange noises. At first, I thought it was just another bombardment, another crack of thunder in the sky. But then the sounds grew too close, too real. There was a scraping, like claws on stone, followed by low, guttural growls that sent chills down my spine. The men in my unit were all on edge, their nerves fraying after weeks of constant fighting. "I swear, it's just rats," Private Doyle said, trying to mask the fear in his voice. But something about the sound didn't match any rat or animal I'd ever heard. It was wrong, distorted. Then the shadows started to move. I was on watch that night, alone in the wet, moonless trench. The others had all fallen into a fitful sleep, exhausted from the day's skirmish. The darkness was thick, oppressive, and the distant flashes of artillery fire only illuminated the terror for a split second, casting long, monstrous shadows against the walls of the trench. I heard it again, scraping, like nails on wood, followed by the unmistakable sound of something breathing. Heavy, labored breaths, the kind you might expect from a beast. I gripped my rifle tighter, my knuckles turning white. Sweat trickled down my face, mixing with the grime that had accumulated over the weeks. My heart hammered in my chest. Then, it appeared. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw something move, something not quite human, not quite beast. It was crouched low, its body wriggling like an insect. The moment I saw it, I froze. It was as though my body refused to acknowledge what my eyes were seeing. It was tall, unnaturally so, with limbs that seemed to bend at odd angles. Its skin was pale and taut, stretched over bones that jutted out grotesquely, as though it had been starved for years. Its face, or what passed for a face, was a contorted mess of features, as though the thing had once been a person, but now it was something else entirely. Eyes black as pitch glowed in the darkness, reflecting the dim light from the artillery flashes. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't. I was paralyzed with terror. And then it spoke. "Join us." The voice was a rasp, a whisper that sounded like the rustling of dry leaves in a windless forest. I couldn't understand it. I didn't want to. I wanted to be anywhere but there. And then it moved. The creature's limbs elongated, bending in ways that were unnatural for any human form. It crawled toward me, its mouth opening wide to reveal rows of jagged teeth, as sharp as razors. I stumbled back, my legs weak beneath me. My rifle slipped from my hands, hitting the mud with a sickening thud. My breath came in shallow gasps as I tried to push myself away from the creature, but it was faster than I could react. Before I knew it, it had clambered onto the trench wall, its long claws scraping against the stone, and another one appeared behind it. More. They emerged from the darkness like shadows, each more twisted and deformed than the last. Some had faces twisted into grimaces of pain, while others had no faces at all, just smooth, featureless skin that stretched over their skulls. They moved silently, with an unnatural grace, their eyes fixed on me, watching me with hunger. "Please," I begged, my voice breaking as I scrambled backward. "What are you?" The first creature hissed. Its lips pulled back in a grin that wasn't a grin at all, a horrifying mockery of something human. It stepped closer, its claws tapping against the wet mud, as if savoring my fear. Then, there was a sound, distant, muffled at first, but growing louder by the second. A gunshot. Another. And then the unmistakable sound of human voices, shouting in alarm. The creatures paused. I didn't hesitate. The moment they turned their attention to the noise, I made a run for it. I don't know how I managed to move my legs, but instinct took over. I dashed down the trench, my breath ragged, my eyes wild with terror. Behind me, I heard the creatures pursuing me, their movements swift and erratic, like animals that had been starved for too long. The scraping of claws on stone grew louder, closer, and I could hear their eerie whispering, calling out to me. You can't escape. I reached the command post, and I didn't stop to explain. I didn't need to. The look in my eyes, the horror that I felt, was enough to make them understand. That night, they sent a squad to search the trench, but they found nothing. Not a single trace of the creatures. I don't know what I saw that night, or what they were. Perhaps they were a product of the madness that war brings. Maybe it was some kind of hallucination, or some twisted product of our own fear and desperation. But I know what I heard, and I know what I saw. Those creatures were real, and they were still out there, waiting. The war ended, but for me, the nightmare never did. I still hear the scratching, the whispers in the dark, even in the safety of my home. And I know, deep down, that those creatures aren't gone. They still wait, in the shadows of the trenches, and in the dark corners of the world. And one day, they'll find me again.